Hey there, Toolaholics. Welcome back to my truck bed camper build. This is part 6, where I'm going to be putting the exterior trim on the windows, and I'll be building a door from scratch and installing it, which took a whole lot longer than I thought it would, but it's perfect for what I'm doing. So there you have it. So I'm working on trimming the outside of this window here. I'm using some pine sheathing that I ripped down into appropriate width, and the reason I'm using that is because I had it already and I didn't have to buy anything new. I'm fastening the trim with 16 gauge brad nails. I suppose I could have used some siding nails that I could have dug out from somewhere that I would have already had, but the brad nails are quicker and easier, so I did that. I'm starting out on my door by getting the jambs cut, and now I'm gonna cut the recesses for my 4 hinges for my 2-part opening door, because it'll be a lot easier to do it now than it will be to do it later once it's all put together. I'm just sanding the inside parts there, the parts that'll be exposed anyways, with 80 grit. Not sure why I really bothered with that. It's not going to be all that fancy, but I did it anyways. I'm putting the door jamb together with brad nails as temporary tacks and glue, and then I'll put screws through the joint on the top of the jamb to make it stronger afterwards. Now that I got the screws in and my jamb all together with a temporary brace at the bottom, I'm setting it all square so that the screws hold straight, and just sanding the edges flush. And then I'm gonna trim it out. I'm doing some figuring to figure out what all my next pieces are gonna be here. So I planed down the pine sheathing so that it'd be 3/4 of an inch thick and have smooth face, and I'm ripping it into the width that I want for my door trim, and cutting out my casing for the door to put that on, and it'll hold the jamb nice and stiff for me while I build the door into it. So now I'm just getting the casing put on the inside side of the door, which actually overhangs into the doorway by 3/4 of an inch to work as the door stop, since my walls are only 2 inches thick and it doesn't give me a whole lot of room to add door stop into the jamb. Time to start building the actual door itself. So I'm using 2x2 for the front door frame, and ripping 2x4 down from 2x2, and then I'm putting 3/4 inch pine around the outside of that, so that I'll have a nice clean edge and not have exposed screws. Here you can see I'm getting my door frame pieces together. They're the 2x2s. I'm just tacking with the 16 gauge nails, and then I'll secure them and set them square with screws to make it nice and strong and sturdy. I'm getting the frames for the door pieces all screwed together using a pilot bit so I don't split the wood. Now that I got my basic frames together, I can wrap them around the outside with a piece of pine that's nice and clean and has mitered corners so that the exposed edges of my door pieces will look nice. Here I'm nailing the trim pieces onto the edges of my door frame pieces and gluing the mitered joints to get a perfectly clean and solid joint in there. Nailing it together with 16 gauge brad nails, and everything holds itself together nice and tight, and making sure that it's set square at this point because it'll be really difficult to alter afterwards. Now that my frames are all finished, I'm cutting out some pieces of the mahogany underlay to put on the outside, the front and back of the frames. I'm not too concerned with having them fit exactly at the moment. In fact, I'm intentionally cutting them to overhang, and then I will go and trim them off with the flush cut bit with the router after I've got them all nailed or stapled and glued together. Sanding the frame with 80 grit just to make sure that everything's sitting flush so I get better glue connection, and running the sandpaper over the wood helps the glue stick and absorb to itself a little bit. It gives it a little bit of teeth. Time to start fastening the sheeting to the outside of the frames of the doors. I'm using lots and lots of glue, so I have glue on the whole surface of everything on the frame, and then I'm tacking it into place with narrow crown staples because I find that brad nails will pull through the thin mahogany sheeting pretty easily. More glue and more staples. It's not exactly a quick process, but it should get me a really good, really sturdy door in the end. The voids inside of the door pieces will be filled up with the same 1.5" styrofoam SM that I put into the walls, so that I'll have a good R value on my doors. Just getting the final piece here put onto the door section. I didn't do that at the same time as the other ones because I ran out of the mahogany underlay that goes onto it, so I had to go and pick up more. Now that these are all put together and glued and stapled, I can use a flush cut bit on router and trim off the excess of the sheeting so that it exactly matches the edge of the door. So I've got a little bit of glue that's leaked out on the edges of the door. I'm just sanding that off and then running a slight round over bit on the edges to round off the edge of the face of the door. I don't want a straight, perfectly square corner on there because that's just gonna be asking to get torn apart or catch on something. And here I'm just running a 1/4 inch round or 1/2 inch round over on the inside edge of the casing. I realized that the brace I'd put in at the bottom of the door was in the way for the actual door pieces to go in, so I put a different one on the front, and now the door pieces fit. So I'm test fitting them and marking out the hinge locations so that I can recess the hinges and have it all ready to go together. Final sanding here on the edges of the doors, since it's easier to do it now than it will be to do it later, especially once the hinges are stuck in there and once the doors are attached in the frame, so this way I don't have to take it apart to do it. Here I'm installing the hinges into the door pieces, so once they're installed into the door pieces, then I'll line them up with the recesses on the door jamb and attach the door pieces to the jamb. This is kind of an awkward pain in the ass to do with one person. Generally you want 2 people installing door hinges and stuff, but it's also a lot easier for me doing it on this makeshift workbench than it would have been to try and get them installed properly while the door was installed and standing up. And as you can see, everything worked out great. Eventually. Oh, since there's a window hole in the door, I better make a window frame up, so I'm ripping some more mahogany to use for that. So this will just hold the glass. This window doesn't open, but since the top section of the door opens, which makes it a little bit simpler. And this will recess and sit right inside of the door hole. Once again, much easier to do this now while it's sitting flat on the makeshift workbench than it will be to do it while it's standing up and the doors are swinging and all the rest of that crap. Just cutting the plexiglass on the table saw here and doing a dry fit to make sure everything works before I nail and screw everything together, or nail and glue everything together. Doing sanding on the inside before I put it together because it'll be really difficult to do it afterwards. And here we go, another dry fit, and that works. I'm going to glue all the joints and nail them together with 16 gauge brad nails. Now I've got the window glass and frame put together, just a quick sand to clean up all the edges that'll be exposed and get all my joints nice and flush. Now I'm putting the casing on. I'm putting it on before I put the window into the door because we'll have at least one side that sits perfectly flush with the edges of the door, and it'll be easier to install it into the door hole if it has the casing on it. Of course, I'm gluing all the joints and nailing it all together with 16 gauge brad nails. And then sand a little bit and get nice perfect flush edges and flush joints, and away we go. And look at that, it fit right into the hole. I just center it up on the door and tack it all on with the 16 gauge brad nails. Now I'm just installing a mahogany lip on the top door that overlaps onto the bottom door to hold them together when the door is closed and to cover up the gap between the two. And it's time to get the door installed. Because I installed the casing for the inside of the door already, it meant I was able to just set the door in place with it all set nice and square. It's got that brace on it, and just tack the casing onto the wall. And then come around to the outside and shim things up and get some slight adjustments in the hinges and the door jamb and put some screws in and make it nice and solid. Installing doors and windows is actually one of my least favorite things to do. So I'm doing it though. Part of why I don't like doing it is I'm really fussy. I like them to work perfectly. Now that I got it all set in place perfectly and installed and working properly, and cutting off my shims and then going around with spray foam and filling the gaps in between the door jamb and the gaps in the windows, and doing it all at once because you pretty much only get one shot with the nozzle on the can and then it doesn't work anymore. If you've made it all the way to the end of this video, I just wanted to take some time and say thanks. I appreciate you. Thanks for watching. If you can click the subscribe button and like it, and click the notification bell so you won't miss out on part 7, which will be coming soon. I'll be doing the interior trim and installing door and window latches and things like that, and not sure if I'm building the bed quite yet because I need to buy a mattress for it still.